Hey there, English hero. Welcome to another episode of the Heroic English podcast. I'm Max, your host, and my intro message for you today is, I'm sure that you've already heard about the term IQ, and possibly also about this other similar term, EQ. So these are intelligence quotient, and EQ stands for emotional quotient. Now, what if I told you that there is another type of quotient that's highly relevant to our goal of speaking English fluently and confidently? That is CQ. Any guesses what that C stands for? CQ stands for, Q, of course, quotient. That C stands for courage. So this podcast is all about the Courage Quotient. As speakers of English as our second language, we face a lot of challenges that push us out of our comfort zone. Once we are out of our comfort zone, we have two options. We either stay in that zone and take action and grow, or we go back into our comfort zone. There are always two options. We either step forward into growth, or we step backwards into safety. There are always two options. We determine whether we embrace courage and become a hero in our English fluency journey, or we allow fear to control us and we decide to become a victim in this English fluency adventure. And you don't want that. This podcast is all about how you can channel that inner superhero of yours and move towards your most fluent, confident, and capable self. So before we get into the show, I want you to take a moment and reflect on the following question. What are 3 things involving English that scare you? So I want you to get clear on that, because that way you can get involved in the conversation with the English heroes in this podcast, and you may be able to relate more to them once you know the answer to that question. If you're on YouTube, feel free to leave a comment down in the comment section below. And if you're listening to this, you can shoot me an email with your answer at max@maxenglishcoach.com, and I might be able to help you. Now, buckle up, because you're going to discover a whole set of new perspectives about courage and the important role it plays in your English fluency development journey.
What's something in English that makes you feel afraid or hesitant to do?
The sentence structure in English and in my language is totally different. Whenever I speak in English, I'm always confusing. So that makes me to be afraid of making mistakes. And also, I have a tendency to be perfect in grammar. I hate grammar mistakes. So that's why I'm so hesitating in speaking.
That's a common fear, the fear of making mistakes. That's classic.
Yeah, so I had a lot of experience. I had a lot of ups and downs in English, and one of them is public speaking. I have been on the stage multiple times, and I remember the first time it was like really horrible. I didn't do very well, because when I saw the stage, it was like super scary to me. I hate talking to strangers when I was young, so it was kind of difficult to me. But now it is really easy. I can talk to the public very easily, and I don't get scared as I used to do.
All right, so those are 2 regular awesome English heroes, Ji-hyun from Korea and Ryan from Algeria. What Ji-hyun shared in the first clip about her fears of making mistakes, and I think one of the possible antidotes to that is shifting your mindset from a apologetic and a I'm embarrassed and I'm ashamed because I made a mistake, because I confused his with her, for example, instead of kind of like going, oh, I just made a mistake, how embarrassing. Start to adopt a more unapologetic mindset. Change that inner dialogue from, oh, I just made a mistake, how embarrassing, I'm embarrassed, sorry for my bad English, to something more like, I just made a mistake and so what? continue with your idea. You can go back and sort of like amend the mistake, but don't give in to this tendency that we have to say sorry, to feel ashamed. I get it though, it can be tricky because you don't want to completely disregard that mistake as something that, okay, you're gonna make and who cares, and not really take it as an opportunity to learn. So you have to strike that balance there, right? And then Ryan shared his fear for public speaking, which is something we can all relate to, right? Public speaking is hard in our first language, let alone in our second language. And so this concept of the courage quotient is all about the dynamic relationship between two elements: the willingness to do something versus your ability to control your fear. This is your drive, your courage, and this is your fear. Now imagine that these are two levers. If your courage and your willingness to do something is a 10 out of 10, and your ability to control your fear is good, meaning you're gonna bring your fear down to a 1, then it's gonna be easy for you to take action and do the thing, whatever that thing is. Now, Ryan was talking about his fear of public speaking. And I take that as, okay, Ryan had a good willingness to take action, to speak publicly, and his fear was also high. Say he had an 8 for wanting to take action, his willingness to act, and he had a 6 or a 7 of fear. All you need to do here is just really allow your willingness to act and your courage to win against your fear. Just focus on keeping your fear in check and just boost your willingness to act, and maybe convert that feeling of nervousness to enthusiasm and actually do it. And one of the weirdest feelings that you can have as an English learner, or I think this also happens in many walks of life, is when you have a 10 of courage and a 10 of willingness to do something and a 10 of fear. I actually kind of appreciate when this happens, and to me this sounds as a person that is highly passionate about that, about doing whatever that is that they have a high willingness to do, but they also have this fear. So they are super excited and enthusiastic to do something, but they're also anxious and fearful, and there is a lot at stake. Now, when you find yourself in this situation, whatever step you take, either forward into growth or back into safety, however small that step is, it's going to create a domino effect for whichever direction you decide to go. Because, the tension is really high. What I recommend is always take a step forward into growth. It's similar to being on a jumping board, looking down at the water, and you either take a step forward and you let yourself go, or you just walk back and go down the ladders and you say, okay, I didn't do it, but that won't feel so good, will it? Just close your eyes and jump off. It's gonna be fine.
Usually I get afraid and I need to talk about something that I never talked before, It's a new topic for me. It's a new subject. And then it's really hard to talk about that because we never use our vocabulary to explain about something new, So that's my challenge.
So what Alex is sharing here is also very relatable. We've all been in that situation where we go into the unknown and we start talking about something that we are not so familiar with. It's like there are longer spaces between thoughts and words and phrases, and we lack kind of like that lubrication between words and sound and sentences and phrases. You just don't flow so naturally. I would say just embrace the awkwardness and the fact that you're not gonna flow so well in the beginning, but like everything really, like the more you practice, the better you get at it.
I have several things that scare me when it comes to English. And one of them is like understanding and using idioms, because the meaning is completely different from what you can figure out if you translate the idiom literally.
I really appreciate what Victoria brought up here. And I actually made a video very early on in this channel, like a year and a half ago, probably. And it's about a concept that is said to be one of the most reliable predictors for the success of a person as a language learner, and that is ambiguity tolerance. What's your tolerance for ambiguous things, ambiguous situations that have to do with English? Ambiguity means that it's not easy to get, that it's not easy to understand. It's just hard to comprehend. And idioms can be that if you really want to focus on what they mean based on the individual words. Sometimes you just have to, get the global meaning and be content with it. The moment when you start to really break down the individual words in an idiom and start to make sense of, why do these words belong in this phrase that is an idiomatic phrase, that's the moment when you start to kind of get a little bit lost in the weeds, so to speak, right? Sometimes you just have to get it. Like with the verb get, precisely, it has 100 different senses, meanings, definitions, phrasal verbs, combination with other words. You're not a dictionary and you don't need to list down all the possible meanings, uses, definitions. All you need to do is just get it. I get it when I hear the word get being used, and I get it in terms that I can use it in that same way, and that's all that I need.
Okay, sorry. I guess it's about making videos. It's like my general fear. So because of it, I still did I did not participate about challenges.
It's funny with video though, because I feel a lot of people don't really mind being here, for example, and you are on video right now. But when you actually have to, on your own, hit record, make a video, it's like you start to overthink it too much, and then you say, I'm not gonna be doing this now.
I always have a little stress because in this country, everyone speaks English. And I speak English with the people when I go to the gym or to the supermarket. And it's a little scary for me because I have the afraid to make a mistake.
I understand that, given your situation living in an English-speaking country, your challenges are probably they come up more often and are different, right, than for a lot of us who are not living in an English-speaking country. So yeah, that makes sense.
Between marks, can I ask you from your own experience, when you just start your English journey, did they mention your mistakes or blamed you or they support you?
I would say it's been always a mix. Well, not so much now, since people usually say, okay, your English is good, but earlier I've been laughed at, I've been corrected, people have pointed out my mistakes. I have a very broad, the whole range of experiences, from your English sucks all the way to that extreme, your English is amazing, right? I'm actually happy now that I can say that I've experienced being in those situations, because now I can talk about it. I can actually relate to someone that is currently going through the same thing, especially okay, I feel a bit insecure about my English. I'm scared about doing this and that and that. And well, today's conversation is a little bit about that. Well, it's not so much about fear. It is more about courage, kind of the other face of fear, right?
Currently, I'm struggling to speak in English, to feel comfortable, to feel confidence speaking, because people here usually speak with linking words, idioms, or sometimes I don't understand. That's when I get scared.
Now, I really, really appreciate what Miguel brought up here, because this allows us to consider the topic of courage in a deeper way, right? Because sometimes it just goes beyond your willingness to do and your fears of doing. Sometimes we have to consider what your skill set is. Because if your skill set, your ability to produce English, your ability to understand English, and your understanding of the mechanics of the language is low, it doesn't matter if you have courage or not, you're not gonna be able to perform well. Just imagine someone with very, very basic English, poor English, and that person didn't have any fear and had high courage, that person would not really be efficient in any communication that they wanted to do. They would come across as just not concerned about making any progress. No one would really take them seriously. But when you are focused on boosting your willingness to act, your courage, while bringing down your fear, and while at the same time leveling up your skill sets and your ability to speak English, that's a very powerful combination, and that's how you position yourself powerfully to really advance in your English, in your life, and everything.
We're going to do a quick reading and we're going to get clearer on what the courage quotient is and how it applies to what we do as English learners. So this is a reading passage from the book, The Courage Quotient, and it's about the science of courage. The definition of courage is the heart of the courage quotient. Courage contains two primary internal elements: the willingness to act and the ability to control fear. To have these two parameters, let's say, if your willingness to act is 10 and you can drive your fear down to 1, you'd have a courage quotient of 10. If, on the other hand, your willingness to act was 1 and your fear was a 10, you'd have a courage quotient of 1 out of 10, or like 1/10 of, courage quotient. Impressions, first reactions to the learnings.
And what impresses me that the value of those two criteria is different. Yeah. So, and it looks like our willingness to act values or weighs more than our ability to control our fear. And I think it can be also interpreted as willingness. Like, I don't have any choice but to act.
That's a great point, Victoria.
The fear goes down.
I think fear is always going to be there, and I think it depends really on your character or on your specific situation, how much fear you're going to feel, whether that's a 1 or a 10 or a 9. I'm thinking specifically like in today's call about Miguel and Carlos. You guys are both living in the United States, so there's this fear of speaking in front of a group of native speakers. So there's a fear of public speaking in and of itself, like regardless of language, plus the challenge of the language. But for you guys, Carlos, Miguel, the other drive for actually being willing to do it is not so much I want to do it or I choose to do it. It is also I have to do it. I mean, your drive, I don't know where that could be. It depends on you. Like, okay, I have to speak English in front of a group of native speakers. Am I going to be trying to hide myself, or am I going to actually, raise my hand and speak up and, share my perspective on something, despite the fear being high? That's when you actually show courage.
I'm always with a bit of fear to speak English. Always. When I talk to strangers, whatever situation, I'm always with a little fear of speaking English, But even so, because of my ability to speak, everything that I've learned, that I'm aware about, I try to put into practice. And that helped me to overcome the fear of speaking English. The more we learn about something, the more ability we develop doing something, less fear we have.
Absolutely. And courage precedes confidence. And there's this quote that I often refer to: the actions of confidence come first, the feelings of confidence come later. So in order for you to get to the actions of confidence, you need to show courage. You need to boost your courage and drive down your fear. And that's how you take action. Love that, Alex. Thank you for sharing. Ryan, your thoughts?
Yeah, so I have a friend that speaks great English, and he learned it before me. So when I started learning it, I always made a few errors, and then he corrected me, and everybody was telling me, Ryan, are you scared? Are you shy? Are you embarrassed because you screw up all the time? But I tell them no, because everybody learns from their faults and their errors, and it's very important to take action and to assume your responsibility, to learn, to thrive, to have the right mindset. So yeah, thank you for listening.
When I talking with my colleagues, I have not a lot of problems. My problem is when I need to talk about a different topic of my job.
A lot of times with courage, I think it's not so much about like doing mental work or like, okay, I'm going to try to boost my courage somehow. And, just trying to convince yourself, okay, I'm courageous and I can do this. Sometimes it's more of a practical thing, in my opinion. Like, do I have the tools to be able to perform in this particular situation? And also the tools of connecting speech, for example, they link their words, they reduce words, they speak faster and stuff like that. So
The best way to overcome fear is to take action. Once we take action, the fear goes away, and the shifting the mode from fear to doing something.
The more knowledge and experience you have doing something, more confidence you have to face it, right? So that's my answer.
I relate it to when you're learning how to ride a bike as a kid. You're going to feel fear, and it's justified because, there is a 90% chance that you're going to fall and you're going to get hurt. But as you start doing that more and more, that 90% of certainty you're going to fall is going to go down to maybe 1%. And the fear is going to be so low because, it's unjustified that you're constantly going to feel fear. You're going to be scared for something that is only 1% chance it's going to happen. I might be scared because I don't really understand the topic that I'm going to be presenting so much. What is that telling me? How can I actually find that feeling of fear helpful? Well, it's going to indicate that I need to learn more about what I want to talk about, right? If I just go in there without having much knowledge about that, then I'm not going to be courageous. I'm going to be more of like irresponsible or careless.
So that was a great conversation. Thank you to all the English heroes that came today and that have been coming to the Heroic English meetups. And better conversations are still to come. Like next week, we are gonna discuss the unique set of strengths that each one of us have and how that can help us empower us on our fluency journey. If you'd like to join us next week or whenever, go to heroicenglish.com, sign up there, it's free, and let's do this. So now I'll take a moment to kind of like outline the basic ideas and takeaways from this video. So this fantastic group of English heroes, they shared about their fears, and I want you to take a moment and what are your top 5 fears that you have when it comes to speaking English and living your English fully. Now consider that together with your willingness to actually take action despite of these fears. Can this willingness to take action outshine your fear, and can you control these fears? Think about that, and also think that courage precedes confidence. If you want to speak English confidently, you need to first take courageous action. Go ahead and boost that willingness to act, because as the saying goes, where there's a will, there's a way. And that brings us to an end. I hope that you enjoyed this episode on the Courage Quotient, and thank you so much for joining us on the Heroic English podcast. If you found value in this episode, kindly consider giving our podcast a 5-star rating on platforms like Spotify, Apple Podcast, iHeartRadio, Deezer, or wherever you're listening. Your support means a lot. Right, English heroes, keep learning, keep growing, keep living your English, and until next time.